Hey there, community, and welcome to the Providence podcast. I'm Sister Leslie, and I'm so glad you're here. And here we are in season 2 of the Providence podcast. If you're a returning listener, thanks for sticking with us. And if you're listening for the first time, welcome to the fold. At God's Space, we have all kinds of ways to stay connected. Small groups, events, book groups, service opportunities, and ways to pray together. You can keep up with what's going on by visiting our website, godspacecommunity.com, and signing up for our weekly newsletter. And you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you feel at home and comfortable, and that you find your place here in community. At God's Space, you can come as you are. You belong here. And now we'll get started with our scripture reflection. A reading from the Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "The person who is trustworthy in very small matters is also trustworthy in great ones. And the person who is dishonest in very small matters is also dishonest in great ones. If, therefore, you are not trustworthy with dishonest wealth, who will trust you with true wealth? If you are not trustworthy with what belongs to another, who will give you what is yours? No servant can serve two masters. They will either hate one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and mammon." The Gospel of the Lord. So, the person who is trustworthy in very small matters is also trustworthy in great ones. And also the reverse, the person who is dishonest in very small matters is also dishonest in great ones. Well, isn't that the truth? If you can't trust someone with a small thing, then how can they be trusted with a large one? This biblical wisdom has been my experience, and as it turns out, it's actually backed by research as well. Brené Brown talks about the anatomy of trust, and I highly recommend some of the videos she's done. I'll be sure to leave one in the show notes, and I hope you listen to it. She has a lot of helpful insights about trust. And one of the things that has stayed with me even since I listened to that video the first time, is that idea that we build trust with people in the small things we do. Every secret we keep, every time we show up when we say we will, whenever we act with integrity, we demonstrate that we are trustworthy. And of course, the converse is true too. Each time I say I will keep something confidential, but instead whisper it to someone else, I break a trust. Whenever I say I'll do something but then don't show up, or flake on a responsibility, I break a trust. Maybe it seems like those little things don't matter, but as it turns out, each of those small moments add up to big trust or distrust. Trust is a sticky thing for me. I was born at the tail end of Generation X, and I've been told that my generation, this wild band of latchkey kids with no helmets to wear and minimal adult supervision, is scrappy, sarcastic, cynical, and distrustful. I'm not sure if these things are true, but there's probably some generational influence at work in me. And compadres in what's now being called the forgotten generation, I see you. When I really self-reflect, though, what I notice is that I've actually trusted pretty easily, but have sometimes had that trust broken. It has often been those little moments when a friend breaks a confidence, or consistently flakes on our plans, or repeatedly oversteps boundaries. I've also experienced full-on betrayal, but mercifully, that's been rare. So I guess I've had experiences that have challenged my trust, and maybe that's normal. Blind, unearned trust in people isn't necessarily a healthy thing. I don't want to trust people who show me through their actions that they're not trustworthy. But I do want to be able to trust the people I'm close to trust God, and to have a basic trust in the goodness of life. And it seems like that basic trust in life might be a little hard to come by at this stage of the game. Not just for me, but for other people too. I mean, we've lived through a pandemic, and although we're hopefully, finally, at the tail end of it, or at least learning to live with it, it has shaken a sense of safety for lots of us. And maybe that feeling of safety was naive, but I think a lot of us felt it and don't anymore. And now we're dealing with a host of other issues like workplace dissatisfaction and even injustice, as well as financial struggles, a climate crisis, and ongoing, contentious politics. With constant upheaval, it's hard to feel safe. And when we felt unsafe over a period of years, how do we get our bearings? How do we feel safe again? Also, many of us who are feeling unsafe tend to live with a lot of privilege. But what about people who are part of marginalized groups? What about African American people who fear violence from law enforcement? Or kids who identify as LGBTQ who are bullied in school? Or students on campuses across our country who are survivors of sexual assault? What does it do to your sense of trust to live in persistent danger? To never feel safe because you're not safe? I don't know, but I feel like there's a call here to work to create a safer world. If trusting is so hard, why should we do it? Well, I think being able to trust is essential for any kind of intimacy. We have to be able to trust if we are to love and be loved. People trust imperfectly, and we also act in ways that break the trust of our loved ones. However, we can grow in our ability to trust and to earn trust. Now, of course, there are some people who have such brokenness that they can't ever really be trusted. But I think most of us have the capacity to grow in this. Trust is not a static thing. Even though it's hard, broken trust can be healed. Of course, it takes some good discernment to know if someone who has broken our trust is capable of earning it back. If we discern that they are, and we do want to trust them again, it may take a little forgiveness on our part and work on their part. And when we misplace our trust and get hurt, we can grow from that too. It doesn't mean we can't trust anyone ever again. It may be an invitation to work on our boundaries. It may be an invitation to be more careful about the people with whom we choose to share our vulnerabilities. And what about trust in God? Some years ago, I was walking with someone in ministry who was really struggling with trust. And at one point, I asked her if she could really trust God, since she couldn't trust any people. And that was one of those questions that ever since then I've been reflecting on and thinking about for myself. There are times when my trust in someone has been broken, but I know I can turn to God, whom I trust, who I totally trust, to love and care for me. On the other hand, I also know that my relationship with God is affected by my relationships with people. The closer I feel to the people in my life, the closer I feel to God. The more I trust trustworthy people, the more I experience the trustworthiness of God. I also see this dynamic at work in my congregation whose spirituality centers on trusting God's providence. I think that the less we trust each other, the more we get stuck in our fear, and then it seems like we can't move forward in our mission. However, our trust in each other can move us toward God. The more we trust each other, the more we are able to take risks together. And when we can risk for the sake of the gospel, our trust in providence deepens. Risking makes us vulnerable, but that vulnerability gives God a chance to show up for us, to be visible. In order to allow God to catch us, we have to be willing to step out on a limb and maybe even take a leap. And when we experience God's care for us in those feet off the ground moments, we know that God is trustworthy. It's a cycle, really, of experiencing God's love, trusting that God's love and care will continue, risking, and experiencing God's love again. And I think each time we go a little deeper in love and trust. This dynamic is at work, whether it's about trust in God or trust in people. Trust is a risk we take. It can lead to heartbreak, sure, but it can also bring about deeper intimacy and connection. When we risk a little vulnerability, we see that someone is trustworthy, and so we can risk again. Eventually, each little moment can add up to a deeper relationship and an abiding trust. So what about you? What have your experiences of trust been like? Positive? Hurtful? What have you learned about trust in your relationships with people? What have you learned about trust in your relationship with God? Do you want to trust more deeply? Maybe we could just take a little time now to talk to God about trust and pray for what we need. maybe we could now take a little time to hold in our prayer all those who are in need of peace and safety. How is God calling you and me and all of us to make this world a little safer for people and creation? Thanks for listening to the Providence podcast. I hope you continue to connect with God's space and, of course, the Sisters of Divine Providence of Kentucky. As you enter this week, may you notice all the ways that God cares for you, and may we all take good care of each other. Peace.